Alex Proyas on the Fisch Bowl. Welcome.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me.
No worries. Is that what we're doing, swimming in a bowl?
Yeah, the Fisch Bowl.
Okay. I hope it's a good size fish bowl.
Yeah, I like to think it's more like a Shark Tank, you know?
Much better.
Right. Awesome. Well, first, I just want to say that I'm a huge fan of your work. I've been following your career for a long time, and it's just a real pleasure to be able to talk with you.
Well, thank you. Lovely to talk to you too.
Awesome. My first question that I wanted to ask you is, what got you interested in film?
Look, it's such a long time ago now. Sometimes I have a hard time remembering. I started making movies when I was really young. I was one of these guys who kind of knew at a very early age that I loved movies and I wanted to make them. So I think I was about 10 when my parents bought me my first Super 8 camera in those days. And I started making films with, friends and family, being recruited sometimes unwillingly to make the movies with me. And really, that's all I've ever really been focused on. So that's why I say, I make movies now because I really don't know how to do anything else. I don't know how else to express what I want to express.
Awesome. I actually went to school here in Pittsburgh for screenwriting. I recently have 2 things published on Amazon, and I've won one film festival this year and have made it a finalist in several others. And I was wondering, what advice would you have for up-and-coming filmmakers that want to break into the field?
Well, these days, of course, it is a completely different world to the one that I started making movies in. I embarked on making, music videos for friends in bands when I first started. It was my first professional work, and I eventually made some TV commercials and became quite successful at doing music videos and commercials, and that got me to LA, and I got an agent and started getting offers for scripts, and that was kind of the way I did it. But of course now, things can get done in a completely different way. I actually do, I have a YouTube channel which kind of tries to help young filmmakers exactly in this way, to kind of explain to them how I believe what the best pathway is to making movies. And of course, the big screen right now is a precarious world. It's a world that's deeply divided in terms of the movies that succeed and the movies that are ignored or sometimes don't even get made. So it's kind of really hard to explain to people how to navigate the sort of traditional Hollywood system. I prefer to tell them an alternative approach, which I believe is going to become the way of the future, which is, we're all going to be streaming our content on the web eventually. A lot of people are doing it now through, the Netflixes of the world. But I believe that down the track, audiences will come specifically for content to individual content creators, i.e. filmmakers. And so I think the best path for most young filmmakers these days is to get in there and do it. Be a guerrilla filmmaker, just get it done. There's no excuse in terms of lack of resources and technology. You can shoot stuff on your phone now if you want to, and it's perfectly fine. Cut it on your laptop. That's very different to the world that I grew up in, and I needed the sort of blessing of the hierarchy to give me the funds and the resources to make films. These days, you don't need that. You can just go and do it. So, that's really my key advice to people, is to not wait to be anointed by the executives, by the powers that be. Just go out there and start making movies, and there's no excuse not to these days.
Fantastic. That's great advice. Now, one thing I did want to talk about real quick, because you mentioned that you started doing music videos, is my show also focuses a lot on interviewing up-and-coming musicians. And I have to say that there is a lot of good music coming out of Australia and New Zealand. And I was wondering, just in general, like, what type of music do you like to listen to, and who are some of your favorite bands?
Well, I'm a mad music fan myself. I've loved music for a very long time, and it's very hard to pick my favorite bands. It's kind of like, you know, picking my favorite movies. I always find that a very, very difficult thing to answer because there's so much that I like, you know. It's nice to hear you say that there's great music coming out of Australia because, of course, we're going through a crisis here. Music tends to kind of follow the same path as film. It kind of hits it earlier because of the fact that data, you know, music data is easier to disseminate over the web, and film data has sort of taken a little bit longer to catch up. But you know, we've had a lot of crises here in terms of the music industry. You know, for a long time we've had, you know, our pubs, our drinking holes here in Australia and specifically in Sydney being kind of the sort of like, you know, ground zero for developing, you know, new bands, and that's become really difficult. Live music has become really kind of had a bit of a hard time here for various reasons. So that's really put a dent in music. And I think also the fact that, you know, and this is a problem throughout the entire world internationally, the fact that bands are having a hard time kind of getting their music heard. You know, there's such a wash of stuff these days, and it's hard to sort of like, you know, bubble up to the surface of this ocean of material that's so easily kind of found, but also easily kind of lost in the mix, you know. And I think film is going through that same situation and will continue to do so. But you know, yes, there is still great music, just as there are still great movies being made. It's just kind of the distribution process and how to get that stuff kind of acknowledged. You know, it comes down to marketing, like as always, you know, trying to get people to notice your material, you know.
Definitely. I had an interesting conversation with several musicians from the UK. They kind of like were delving into this issue somewhat, which is it's become like incredibly hard for overseas bands to play overseas. And it's not even like so much the issue of transporting the equipment and everything. It's like a whole big other issue. It's really like a little disappointing because, you know, the days of like, I mean, when music, I think in the 90s was at its peak, the amount of music that was pumping out of the 90s and the freedom of like expression with it was just like something else. And with the 2000s, like it all changed. I think that's one of the reasons that The Crow is so nostalgic and why it can never be replicated. And I think that's a good segue to talk about that film.
Yeah, I mean, The Crow's soundtrack has definitely become a kind of a seminal movie soundtrack, I think, because it captured sort of a lot of the flavour of the music that was around at the time, you know. You know, it's interesting, the Crow, you know, like Gothic and industrial music was kind of around, and Gothic fashion, you know, was around in England and Australia a lot earlier than it kind of became popular in the US. And in fact, The Crow had a lot to do with actually popularising sort of Gothic culture and industrial, you know, alternative music in the US, I think. And it's partly because me being an Aussie and also being kind of influenced by those sorts of, that sort of music, you know, like The Cure and Joy Division and bands like that. At that time, it seemed like when I first read the Crow comic, I went, oh, well, this is like Gothic style, you know. And it seemed like that music kind of inhabited that world really well. So I sort of, you know, I was kind of really involved with putting the soundtrack together and picking the specific bands that were involved, and, you know, like going to Trent Reznor at the time and I actually suggested he cover Love Will Tear Us Apart, the Joy Division song, and he didn't want to touch that one because that was kind of like such an iconic track, and he decided to do another Joy Division track as well, which the title eludes me just at the moment for some strange reason. But you know, that all sort of seemed to hand in glove. That style of music and style of fashion seemed to fit the material really well, which is, I think, why it was such a successful soundtrack and so kind of that era, you know. But it's interesting, that music kind of seems timeless to me in a strange sort of way. I just went to see Peter Hook, who's the bass player of New Order and also of Joy Division. He just did a concert tour here in Australia where he did orchestral interpretations of all the Joy Division tracks, and it was really quite a fascinating thing to see that music done, or to hear that music done reinterpreted in this sort of orchestral way. And I mean, he got rock and roll quite often. He can't not when he's got a bass guitar on stage. I mean, there were drums and electric guitars, of course, as well, but a lot of the tracks were reinterpreted. So to me, it told me how timeless the music was, both lyrically and melodically. It seemed to kind of straddle a kind of netherworld of timeless music, And I think, again, that's why maybe a lot of the tracks from The Crow, I think we picked them very, very well, and they sort of, they're still kind of great tracks to this day, I think,
Absolutely. I actually got into a lot of bands that were in that film. One of them that I really, really like a lot is Medicine.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I'm really into like that like kind of like noise rock, shoegaze, dream pop type stuff, and they're definitely an awesome band.
Absolutely. I didn't know who they were at the time. They were sort of a new band at the time. But I like the track that they came up with for the film. I think they wrote that specifically for the movie. Most of the acts did in fact write the tracks for the film,
Yeah. I was like obsessed with the movie for a period of time when I was in my freshman year of high school. It was like my last Halloween where I kind of went out and went like trick or treating and whatnot, and I put on the makeup and everything and got like a blow up electric guitar and put like a string around it to be like Brandon Lee. And I have like a bunch of the action figures like in mint condition right now because I'm a big collector of that stuff.
Oh, they're probably worth something by now, I would imagine.
Oh yeah. I bought them when they're already worth something. So
yeah,
they're kind of like investments for me. And anytime I kind of see like specific, I collect like movie collectibles, but specifically like movie action figures, and I'm like a very like a purist in how I collect them, because I won't do like video game, I won't do TV, I only do like film. And I have like a wall of Arnold Schwarzenegger that keeps growing because I'm like obsessed with that guy. I have a lot of like horror themed stuff of like Jason and Freddy and Myers and Chucky and Leatherface, but I have a box set of the Crow, which is the scene where he fights Michael Wincott at the end, and I have a special edition of scene where he's like walking down the street and the Crow is like on his shoulder with a jacket.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean it's a really a great movie, and I really think that Brandon Lee could have gone further, and it would have definitely like redefined his career, and it was just really unfortunate with what happened. And
there's no question Brandon would have been a huge movie star after that movie, definitely.
And I think that's even more the reason why like it should never really be remade, because it's
I agree. You
got to show some respect, and
it's disrespectful. I mean, you can't put that movie in the same category as any other movie, because when I've been very vocal about not remaking the movie, specifically with that character and that story, because it is Brandon's movie. It was finished for Brandon. Brandon made it what it was, and it's not like you're making any other film. It's not to do with the with the relative merits of the film. It's to do with the fact that Brandon lost his life making it, and it should remain his legacy and nothing other than that. So I mean, they've done other Crow stories with other characters. Eric Draven is Brandon's character, and so and my point also is any movie that tries to create to benefit from the Crow brand really will be benefiting from Brandon Lee himself. You can't deny that. So I just feel like they should Hollywood for a change should show some due respect and just leave it be, you know.
I definitely agree. I'm like 110% with you on that. Like, really, I'm.
Plus, we're honestly sick of remakes, aren't we? I mean, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
How many remakes can we take? You know, let's stop now. I think we've had enough. You know.
Right. I mean, as much as like I'm excited to see like the new Halloween movies that are coming out. It's like the last one was good, but it wasn't as good as Halloween 2. And I personally, as much as I love Jamie Lee Curtis, and she did an excellent job in the film, it was like Donald Pleasance kind of was those movies. And seeing other remakes and stuff and reboots, I mean, the only one that I'm willing to give an exception for is more Mad Max.
I mean, look, you know, it's not a hard and fast rule, obviously. I mean, you know, Mad Max is really more sequels than remakes. It's a very different thing when you've got the man who created the franchise making more movies in that franchise. I mean, I wouldn't classify that as remakes. George Miller has a right to make as many Mad Max movies as he wants to make, really. And it's good to see that they're being supported. But when it comes to Disney remaking The Lion King, which was in fact, you know, originally even something that was kind of an illegal remake of another other material that wasn't Disney, you know, that is really like the death of cinema right there. That's right. How movies are dying, because we're ending up in a world where all we're getting, the movies that people are supporting and the movies that keep getting injections of vast amounts of money, these huge franchises or remakes that are just regurgitating the same stuff over and over and over again. Sadly, audiences are still going to them, but they're killing movies because it's at the expense of any other type of original movie telling. You know, the number of successful original movies you can count on one hand in a year, whereas there was a time in Hollywood where most of the movies that came out were original movies. You know, even Star Wars was an original movie once, you know, a long time ago that people don't even remember anymore, you know. And it's the problem with this sort of remake mentality is that eventually people are going to get sick of, I mean, they're going to get sick of them unless Disney, you know, creates this kind of endless situation where in 7 years' time we get yet another remake of the Lion King and all the others that they're remaking. But I doubt it. I feel like people have now seen the CG version of that film. I don't know that they're going to want to support another, you know, improved CG version in 7 years' time. So when the audiences grow tired of the remakes, there'll be nothing left out the other end. There's no new original material anymore, you know. All the filmmakers who can make original material are interested in making it. They'll all disappear, go off to Netflix land, you know. And that's what's really killing movies. And, of course, my conspiracy theory belief is that, you know, Disney are almost doing this on purpose. Disney now being the monopoly, the Entertainment Inc. of filmmaking. Well, they don't want to share the profit margin with the exhibitors, with the screens, you know, with the multiplexes. They'll take it all, you know. They'll have their own streaming service. I think it's up and running already, the streaming service, isn't it? The Disney streamer. You know, eventually they'll just go, you know what, we don't want to have the next Star Wars movie screened theatrically. We might screen it theatrically, you know, in a handful of screens just for people who want to experience it. But for everyone else, we're just going to stick it on TV straight away, you know, and that way we keep 100% of the profit. People are going to still go and see it, you know, and they'll add more subscribers to their service, you know. So I really believe that, you know, movies are being killed by these franchises. I really think it's you know, the writing's on the wall, you know, which is why I say to young filmmakers, do it another way, you know, because you might not have an industry, a big screen industry to come into if you focus on that. In 5 years' time, it may not be there anymore, you know.
Absolutely. I'm in agreement with you. I personally think Disney is the devil, but, you know, that's just my opinion. I did want to talk about on the topic of Mad Max. I wanted to have that kind of be like a segue into Dark City, because one of my all-time favorite Aussie actors, Bruce Spence, has an awesome role in that film, and as well as the rest of the cast. And
Bruce is there, and Bruce is also in Gods of Egypt, my latest opus. He's
right.
hard to recognize in the movie because he's one of the judges, one of the decayed, mummified judges in the land of the dead, and he makes a very brief appearance, but he's there. If you know he's there, if you know it's him, he's instantly recognizable as always.
Yeah, I caught him. I also want to talk about that film as well. First, I just want to say, I have some very just top favorite science fiction movies, and Dark City is in the top 10 because it has that strange dark vibe like The Crow did, but it's kind of on a whole nother level. And just the whole concept of the movie, and I own the Blu-ray with the director's cut, which definitely explains the film a lot more. But just the concept in general, I was wondering what made you come up with that concept, and what was it like filming the film with the cast?
It's actually it was actually a script that I was writing before The Crow, and when The Crow became so successful financially for the investors, I had all the other studios in Hollywood kind of asking me what I wanted to do next, and I would give them this script, Dark City, and they'd then instantly say, well, what else do you want to do, And they just didn't really get it. And this became, I think it was the film was a little bit ahead of its time, quite frankly. And even when it came out, we did test screenings where audiences weren't quite understanding some of the concepts in the film. And I was being pressured to sort of dumb it down. And I did crumble under that pressure by adding the voiceover that explains something at the beginning of the movie, which I don't think really did much apart from damage of the movie, but that was what I had to do. I didn't have Final Cut. The studio had were asking for much worse changes. I was being asked to completely re-edit it and put more explanation in, and etc. So I fought as hard as I possibly could under the circumstances. But you're right, the director's cut is much closer to my original vision and pretty much what we first tested, in fact, and got all the bad responses by the idiots in the screening. It was tough to make, even under the circumstances where I had a lot of people wanting to finance my next film because I'd just had a successful one, which is, as that's the way it works. You make a successful film financially, everyone wants to work with you, and you make a film that doesn't do so well and no one wants to work with you. That's just the simple, harsh reality of Hollywood filmmaking. And on top of that, Dark City was conceptually challenging, and everyone was aware of that aspect of it. God, these days I don't even know that you'd even have a chance. You wouldn't even if you had a hugely successful film, getting something like Dark City done would be well nigh impossible, I would say. But it was. What was it like to make the movie? It was great. It was great because it was hard work. We had a very tight budget for what we were trying to do. We were still building these massive sets to create the city. It's all built, on stages, and we didn't really have the budget to do that. These days, of course, you could do so much of it in CG and make it a lot more affordable. But in those days, we were at the mercy of still constructing these massive environments, So that part of it was tough, but it was great fun to make the movie because it was my complete vision at the time that I was making it. I didn't have any intervention from the studio. They just let me do my thing. It was only in post-production it became that the relationship soured and it became a slog. But up until then, it was terrific fun, and the cast were great to work with. William Hurt is always a challenging actor to work with for a director, but his heart's in the right place. It's for a good reason. He's just trying to do the best job he can, and so he sort of challenged me quite often, but that's just the relationship of actor-director relationship, really. Yeah, it was quite an experience, and over the years it's become it's kind of definitely on a par in terms of people's love for that film, and there's incredible following for that movie that's only kind of increased over the years.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things to do is introduce my friends to new concept, interesting movies, and especially movies that I kind of just call like head trip movies. And Dark City is one of my favorite movies, especially since I own the director's cut, to introduce to someone new or a new friend or something. Because every time they, like, the movie's over, they're like, man, that was crazy. Really, really awesome. And it's definitely up there in my top 10 favorite science fiction films of all time. And I think because sets were used at the time, it allows the film to hold up even more than if it were to come out today. That's one of the reasons why I like the new Blade Runner movies so much, is because they actually were using sets and models and things like that made the movie actually look more aesthetically pleasing to watch on screen. And, I definitely, am a fan of CG. I definitely know that it needs to be used and it has to be used and all that, but I'm personally more of a fan of it when you don't know that it's there. And I've always been more of like a practical effect type of guy, especially since I was born in the 80s and grew up in the 90s, and I'm a huge, horror sci-fi fan. So seeing...
Yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't really matter what technique you use. CG has a bad name with people because it's they're noticing the bad CG, and they don't, when it jumps out at you, they don't realise that they're taking for granted the really good CG that's creating the illusion and servicing the story perfectly well, And it's the same with models or miniatures or any other, or makeup or any other special visual effect technique. I mean, it's what you do with it. And sometimes it's not even whether it's invisible or not. It's about whether it's servicing the narrative. Some of my favorite visual effects are ones that I know they're visual effects. I mean, I love Ray Harryhausen movies. I mean, you can't get more artificial looking and more, effectsy looking than some of Ray Harryhausen's films. But I love that stuff because when I saw it when I was a kid, even then I sort of knew that I even knew how it was done. I knew it was because I was interested in it. I found out how he animated the skeletons in Jason and the Argonauts, and how he reproject the background plate and mask off different parts of the frame. I knew all that stuff even then, but it didn't bother me because I just loved the quality of the work. I loved that aesthetic, and I loved how it serviced the story, And it's the same now. It's like whether or not it's invisible, what technique is used, it's kind of irrelevant if it actually works for the story, So I embrace all techniques, and I think it's it's at the moment there's a sort of popular opinion about CG, and it's kind of a bit misguided, because CG can create an environment just as well as model miniatures can, and vice versa. It's just how it's used, It's horses for courses, as we say in Australia. It's like whatever works,
Definitely. I wanted to talk about Gods of Egypt, and if we have time, I also want to talk about I, Robot.
Sure, yeah.
Gods of Egypt was a lot of fun for me because I love ancient Egyptian history and myths and legends from that time. I mean, the whole King Tut, was it a curse or was it all natural? Fascinates me watching shows about stuff like that, and of course having Bruce Spence in there was awesome as well. I was wondering what was that film like shooting for you?
It was fun, and again it was another situation much like Dark City, where we had I was given all the freedom in the world to make the movie, but then we had this whole other issue emerge when the film was getting close to release. It wasn't the testing of it; it actually that film tested very well. But, the movie, as you rightly say, you had fun with it. That's exactly what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be taken as just a fun adventure movie, in the world of Egyptian mythology. Now, I'm Egyptian myself. I was actually born in Egypt, and I've always been fascinated with Egyptian mythology. I as I mentioned before too, I also love Ray Harryhausen movies. So that's really what I was trying to channel. I was trying to channel some kind of weird Ray Harryhausen film, but the tone of the movie really was the first Star Wars movie. That's really what we were trying to embrace, is the first Star Wars movie is not meant to be taken seriously. It's a bit of fun. It's kind of goofy, quite often goofy at times. And that's exactly the spirit that I was hoping to capture with Gods of Egypt. And I think I actually successfully did do that, you know. Unfortunately, it came out in a climate in America which was dreadfully serious, where the the world that you are, the political climate that you're living in now is kind of the result of those early days of political correctness that started to rear their heads in 2006 or 7 or whenever it was, when we first started making the movie, you know, then evolved quite dramatically by the time we'd finished the movie, and the movie was coming out in 16, I think it was, something like that. And sorry, I didn't mean 2007, I meant 2012, I think is when we first started making the movie. And, you know, it really, you know, this shift in kind of what movies could or could not do, could or could not say, how they had to be cast, how they shouldn't be cast, became this massive, explosive kind of issue to do with the movie, to the point where the studio completely freaked out and wanted to apologize for the way the movie was cast, which is something that they were, you know, I mean, they cast the movie, you know, so they kind of like, they told me who had to be in it. That's the kind of the way it works. Otherwise, they don't finance your movie. But being Egyptian, it didn't bother me that we didn't have any Egyptian actors in there. And it is what it is, you know. And it's a bit of fun and a bit of entertainment, you know. And apart from anything else, you know, I don't know the sort of people that they were wanting, that the critics and the audiences were expecting, or the haters were expecting. But there is a very short supply of Middle Eastern actors available to make a movie such as this, you know. So I'm still very confused about what the outcome was. I think it was just kind of like a knee-jerk response to something that, you know, the culture America was very kind of obsessed with at the time, and continues to be so, the whole racial divide that grips your country, you know. And sadly, it's been expressing itself in kind of the most ridiculous, extreme kind of, you know, requirements that movies just can't or shouldn't have to conform to, you know, because they're, you know, movies after all. They're fun. They're a bit of entertainment.
I definitely agree. I agree with like all that. I don't like to get like too political on my show. I like to keep it about like, you know, entertainment and everything. But I definitely agree with all that. The next film that I wanted to talk about is I, Robot. What was it like working with Will Smith?
Will was terrific. He's the reason I survived the experience, because that was a really unpleasant production in terms of studio involvement, studio interfering all the way through the shoot, and well into post-production. And Will kind of kept my spirits up. He's a gem, you know. He's a lovely guy to work with, and you know, if anything, he would distract me to the point of where I couldn't do my job, because I'd be laughing so hard at some gag or something that he was doing on set, you know. So it was just a pure pleasure in that respect, and pure hell in terms of the studio involvement, you know. You know, I mean, in terms of, you know, just to get political just for a moment, I mean, that movie was that movie's about racism, you know. It's about,
right.
About, you know, the robots being kind of the sort of stand-ins for whatever type of human that people are racist toward, you know? And so for me it was like, you know, politically just the very reverse situation. And I think a lot of people got that when they saw the movie, you know, and I think that to me was a good thing. But I mean, that shows you how different the world was between when I made I, Robot in 2003 to cut to, you know, a little over, what was it, 15 years later to the world of Gods of Egypt. I mean, you know, chalk and cheese in terms of the climate that for those two movies, you know. What else can I tell you? What else do you want to know about iRobot?
I know that it's based on the book, and I've read several stories from the book. I was wondering, like, how much, like, where did the title come from, and how much involvement with, like, inspiration was actually taken from?
Well, it was actually the original spec script was written by a writer, Jeff Vintar, and it was called Hardwired, and that came to me well before it was iRobot. The script came to me, and it was a very kind of, it was almost like a piece of theatre. It was written like a play. It was like a set in one room, and it was ostensibly the interrogation scene that ended up in the final version of iRobot, kind of, blown out into a theatrical piece, a feature-length theatrical piece, And I really loved it. I thought it was great, but I went, oh, this is like iRobot. I mean, it's essentially the same. It had some of the same ideas, within it. And then about, I don't know, maybe a year later, we started working on taking that story and developing it into a feature-length film, and obviously opening it up, taking it out of the one-room scenario, et cetera, et cetera. So we were on that path already, developing that particular script, Hardwired. And then about a year later, one of the Fox executives called me up and said, well, we actually have now got the rights to Isaac Asimov's iRobot. We knew that you were interested in it. And I said, I am interested in it, and it's great, but it's a series of short stories. So it's very hard to, firstly, make that into one feature-length film. And I know that because others have explored that very idea, and I don't think it's worked. And also I'm working on this thing called Hardwired, which is ostensibly it. So we decided to combine the two ideas together. Obviously, the title iRobot means a lot more than Hardwired as a title. It already had some kind of recognizability, I guess, even though it wasn't actually Asimov's title. It was kind of given to him by his editor at the time. And then we basically took elements out of some of the stories and kind of folded them into this one overall plot that we had, which was the Hardwired plot, essentially, which had already evolved. So the two things kind of mutated into one, and the whole idea was we would make a series of movies based on iRobot, and we would use elements of each story, because it's like no single story in iRobot works in the collection, works as a narrative for a movie, and you certainly can't combine them all together. So to me, it felt like the best way of bringing the iRobot concepts to the cinema screen. You couldn't be too loyal to the original material. You had to use them more as inspiration and conceptually, rather than sticking to the numbers narratively. And that's the way it became iRobot, in a nutshell.
Very interesting. I'm curious, have you seen the movie Automata?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I believe that was based on one of the stories from the book iRobot. And because I know it incorporated like the laws that were in iRobot. And
yeah. But again, it takes a great license. It's similarly to what we did with iRobot.
Right. I love like science fiction movies like that, and I'm definitely iRobot's one of my favorite Will Smith movies, and I always kind of thought of like Will Smith as like the black Charlton Heston when it came to sci-fi stuff, like the comedic black Charlton Heston. I always enjoy going to see his films, and I'm really excited to check out Gemini Man. That looks really entertaining.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be.
Absolutely. The last two questions I have for you are, and you're going to hate me for the first one, which is, what are some of your favorite films? And the second one is, do you have any up-and-coming projects to promote?
Look, in terms of films, I mean, it's yes, I do hate you, and I've already explained why. I can tell you what the films that made me want to become a filmmaker are. I mean, that's probably the easiest thing to do. Not to say that these are my all-time favorite films, although maybe one of them still is. I don't know. The movie that made me want to become a filmmaker was 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I'm still a huge fan of Stanley Kubrick, of course, and all of his films. And I tend to like directors overall, more so than specific individual films. Though there are specific films too. So Kubrick got me going. 2001 I saw when I was It must have been like a re-release or something. I was very young when I saw it. My dad, who was a big movie nut, took me to see it when I was probably like 6 years old or something ridiculous. And it was like, it blew my mind, you know, as it blew anyone's mind at any age, you know. And so really that was the sort of the origin of my passion for film, you know. And I remember getting it strangely mixed up in my brain with some other another science fiction movie, which was one of the Planet of the Apes movies. Too young to have seen the first one theatrically, but I think I saw Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and we're talking about the original Planet of the Apes movies as well, of course. And I somehow in my very young mind I got the apes in Planet of the Apes mixed up with the apes, the early man in 2001, and I sort of merged the two movies together, which made for an even weirder movie than 2001 ever was. So that was kind of what got me going, and you know, over the years, I mean, I love Tarkovsky, I love Hitchcock, I love Louis Buñuel. There are many directors who I'm a huge fan of, and then obviously many individual films. So that's the best I can answer that question. Sorry, what was your other question?
If you have any upcoming projects to promote.
Oh, upcoming projects. Yes, of course. I've always got upcoming projects. Any filmmaker worth their salt has always got upcoming projects. I'm working on a project called A New Country, and I'm currently casting and financing, which is the two most difficult parts of the entire process usually. But it's one that I'm determined will be my next film. It's a science fiction, it's a parallel universe sort of science fiction piece, and it's kind of time travel, parallel universe sort of situation. And I love it. It's my own script. I've determined not to make any other. You know, a while ago I sort of got sick of telling other people's stories, and I'm determined to only do original content now, stuff that I generate myself, because I really enjoy writing. But of course, original storytelling is something that is. It's the hardest it's ever been to get financed for the big screen. It's never been tougher in that respect, and so it may end up eventually being you might end up seeing it on a streaming service somewhere, perhaps, I don't know. But I'm still gunning for the big screen if I can do it.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like an awesome upcoming film. I really hope everything works out with that, and you already have my money, so.
Very good. Well, thank you. Nice talking to you.
Same here. I would love to have you on the show again anytime.
Good stuff. All the best. I hope I've given you enough to work with.
Definitely. Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me. I hope the temperature was just right.
Very much so. Thanks, Sam. Speak soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.